Good evening and welcome to the weekly Roundup with William Hellmann. I'm your host, William Hellmann, the host with something to offer that isn't quite the most, but still pretty interesting. Anyway, we have a great show for you tonight. Our guest today is Maria Vismal, who ran for the 6th City Council District here in Baltimore as a Republican, of course. And she sought some great stories to tell us about that race. And we're also going to discuss today's main topic, which will be social media, the lies, the censorship, and the inability to allow us to have our opinions. Now, the censorship is nothing new. Conservatives getting banned on social media, that's part of our daily lives. It's a badge of honor, if you will. But it's gone beyond just banning what we say. Turned into fact-checking things in 2016 with dubious fact-checkers who themselves needed to be fact-checked because they were caught lying so many times. And now, welcome to 2021. Last Saturday, Allum Bokhari of Breitbart News published an opinion piece in Breitbart about YouTube's new decision to remove the dislike button, which is being marketed as trying to be more user-friendly, but in reality, it's a way to stop us from criticizing the elites. It's a way for us to stop embarrassing people like Joe Biden or any left-wing celebrity that puts their nut-job left-wing opinions on the internet and then gets ratioed. For those of you who aren't in the know, ratioed is when somebody posts a video and then there's a hilarious ratio of dislikes to likes on their thing, showing that people wildly disapproved of what they said. But, we can't criticize the anointed. That's against the holy rules of Facebook. But anyway, more about that in my interview. Now it's time for This Week in the News. Following the passage of Georgia's new election integrity laws last week, a chorus of woke corporations and CEOs followed senile Joe Biden's lead by attacking the Georgia legislature and spreading misinformation about the law. CEOs from Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines released false statements claiming that the law suppressed voters, and even Major League Baseball removed the All-Star game from Atlanta, making similar claims. However, these woke corporate bullies were in for a surprise. And it was a surprise to us too, because rather than sitting back silently like they usually do, GOP lawmakers have begun to fight back. On Thursday, the Georgia legislature passed a law stripping Delta Airlines of the tax breaks on fuel that they had been enjoying for an extremely long time, while the Texas state legislature passed their own election integrity bills in defiance of these woke scalds. But it didn't end there. On Friday, Representative Jeff Duncan of South Carolina announced his intention to draft legislation stripping Major League Baseball of their antitrust protection, while the Georgia GOP also banned Coke products from their offices. Now, while it's unclear whether or not this backlash will deter future attempts at corporate bullying to influence legislation, the tone struck with this is a refreshing change of pace. Now, this next story gets my nomination for Hot Take of the Week. Last Thursday, the People's Daily, a propaganda mouthpiece for the Chinese Communist Party, published an editorial piece claiming that the U.S. concept of human rights is sowing seeds of hatred. China, which markets its authoritarian dictatorship as a loving, more stable than erratic democracies kind of thing, built upon their humiliation of Biden's Secretary of State by claiming the U.S. uses war to spread democracy while failing to deliver on human rights at home. Let's see where they go with this one. To support their propagandistic argument, they cite the U.S. intervention in Iraq, clearly a country that has a better human rights record than we do because Saddam Hussein was executing dissidents and burying them in mass graves. And also our intervention in Libya, where dictator Muammar Gaddafi allegedly kidnapped and raped teenage girls during his dictatorial rule. Now, this, of course, is only the latest example of escalating rhetoric from China, which seems to view the Biden White House as weak and unable to hold them accountable. And they're probably not wrong. Last week, I closed out my program hoping the crisis at the border would ease down. Unfortunately, it's only gotten worse. On Thursday, two shocking revelations came to light about the situation at the border. First, Project Veritas published footage of a makeshift processing center under the Anzadalis International Bridge in McAllen, Texas. The video shows entire migrant families being made to sleep on the dirt in an impromptu enclosure with nothing but foil blankets, in what is a chilling parallel to a photo leaked in March showing that the Biden administration has resumed housing migrant children in cages, giving them only foil blankets, which is a practice that was used by the Obama administration. In another related story released by Breitbart News, photos have come to light showing that the Biden Customs and Border Patrol has stopped trying to deter migrants from illegally crossing in the United States, and is now simply putting up signs along the Rio Grande near the Anzadalis Bridge, meant to direct migrants who had illegally crossed to a nearby processing center, assumingly the one under the bridge. Both of these stories are shocking and come about a week after Biden put Kamala Harris in charge of securing the border, a role she appeared to decline. In a lighter note, in a Sunday morning interview on CBS, Joe Biden's son Hunter Biden, notorious for his destructive drug addiction and shameless attempts to avoid paying child support for his illegitimate son, he had with a stripper, he's openly admitted to smoking Parmesan cheese at the height of his addiction. Parmesan cheese, having mistaken it for crack cocaine. In the interview, Biden admits to spending some days on his hands and knees picking through the carpets for leftover crack. And smoking whatever resembled his drug of choice. He also admitted during this time he probably smoked more Parmesan cheese than crack. Well, congratulations, you'd probably make a good pizza topping now, Hunter. Despite these desperate lows, the Biden family did not actually try to stage an intervention for poor Hunter until his father began running in 2020. Now, this story ties in a bit to today's topic. In another shocking low for the mainstream media, CBS News' 60 Minutes was caught maliciously editing remarks made by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. The edited video was an exchange between DeSantis and reporter Sharon Alfonsi, in which Alfonsi accused DeSantis of a pay-for-play scheme involving vaccine distribution. The edited footage aired by 60 Minutes was meant to make it appear as if DeSantis was aggressively avoiding the question. However, the full footage obtained by Fox News showed that DeSantis fully answered the hack reporter's question, and his answer totally obliterated her insinuations of illegal activity. The 60 Minutes piece was also further panned by the former Democrat head of Florida's Emergency Management Agency, who stated the company picked for vaccine distribution was not suggested by DeSantis. Instead, it was suggested by the Emergency Management Agency as well as the Florida Department of Health, as it was the only company actually prepared to distribute the vaccine at the time. The story takes a bizarre turn from here, however. Not only has 60 Minutes not issued a retraction, as of Sunday night, the footage showcased by Fox News has disappeared from where it was on YouTube, apparently subject to a new moderation action by YouTube, which allows moderators to permanently lock a video in private mode so that it can only be viewed by the owner of the channel. Critics have been quick to point out that this apparent coordination with Silicon Valley to cover their tracks, as well as 60 Minutes' refusal to cover the Cuomo nursing home scandal or sexual harassment scandal, displays an extreme hypocrisy on their part. And that was this week in the news. Now for our interview segment. Yesterday afternoon, I did a phone interview with my good friend Maria Vismal, who, as I said, ran in the 6th City Council district here in Baltimore. Now, 6th district is an interesting district. On one side of this district, you've got the waspy white liberals, and on the other, far, far end, you've got what people call the ghetto. And in the middle of that, though, is probably my favorite part of Baltimore, the Jewish community of Park Heights, which is very rich and diverse in the fact that they've got Orthodox Jews and Reformed, and very welcoming place to some degree. Anyway, Maria ran in this district, hoping to make change in Baltimore, and she shared some of her story with us in the interview yesterday. So we're going to switch over to that now. And she's also shared her thoughts as well on the issue of social media and their manipulative practices. So here we go. Let's enjoy this then. 1. Good afternoon, Maria. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you so much for inviting me this afternoon.
I'm glad to have you on. So let's start off with the interesting part of the topic, your city council run. What made you decide to run for city council, Maria?
So it was really simple. I was just utterly disgusted with the status quo. Baltimore City, for the longest time since I've been around, has been run into the ground by politicians who just take advantage of people. And we can see that these politicians have been getting rich, but especially in the city, there's just no accountability. There's so much corruption. And so, just being utterly disgusted and frustrated, I just had to run. If not now, then when? If not me, then who? So I just threw my hat in the ring, and I think we did do a great job, especially as a Republican, since it had been for so long just a landslide. There would be a one party system where only obviously Democrats ran, and after the primary, it was already decided. So I was really pleased with that. But ultimately, just being um, angry enough to put my foot down and get in the race and show the city that it's not just Democrats that want to improve or, that are out there. It's also Republicans that can really make some noise and change what's going on.
I mean, we all feel the same way, but you put your foot down and do it. So, how did your family react when you ran, especially because you ran as a Republican and you're a black woman, and that's supposed to be, oh, no, not a thing.
So, interestingly enough, my immediate family, we are all conservative Republicans.
Nice.
So, I am Roman Catholic, and it's almost, a guarantee that if you're Catholic, typically you are conservative and traditional, and you vote for, pro life, you vote for family, you vote Republican. We did have some people that are kind of distant family members that when I told them, especially when it came to fundraising, they're just opposed because they immediately say, you're a Trumper and I don't support that. But for the majority of my family, it was just total support. I had uncles and cousins come out and canvass with me. I raised about, I would say, 2 grand from immediate family and friends
Very good.
alone. So unlike a lot of people that I know that are, black conservatives, come from a family that is majority conservative, and I got, a lot of support. So it was positive on that end.
And it has to be really good to have support because, like you said, not a lot of black conservatives or any conservative associated with a minority really get that support from their family usually. So you are blessed to have that. Really quickly, I wanted to ask you. Apparently, during your campaign, you were harassed by a relative of your opponent. So, do you want to share that story?
So yeah, it was very interesting because my opponent, I guess, he's never really had a primary. He's never really had someone to campaign against post primary, excuse me. And so I had heard stories from fellow Democrats who ran and said, this guy is a monster, he'll harass. But of course, I thought that would just be something that, on the opposition side that they faced internally, since, first of all, I'm a woman, and second of all, it's supposed to be just in the bag for Democrats, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't expected to get any real pushback because I was thinking he didn't see me as a threat. But when it came down to the last 7 days prior to election day, since it was COVID, we had early voting, and so people could come to the polling sites. And every day I would be out there, obviously trying to catch any and all voters that came to my polling location and just give them that final, I'm here, I'm campaigning. If I wasn't able to reach you via, mail or social media, let me in person just give you my pamphlet and chat you up a little bit. And so I guess um, what is it? The candidate, my opponent, had got wind of it because for the first 2 days it was just one of his volunteers, but on the third day he actually came out in person, and from I would say from that Wednesday up until the Sunday and on election day, my opponent was out there every single day, and each day it would get more and more terrifying because my opponent would not only have his cousin get in my face or have, I guess, his volunteers surround me. The opponent himself would taunt me verbally, and he would do all sorts of tactics, whether it be breaking the rules, going inside with his campaign um, stuff on, so wearing his shirts with his slogans, or even going behind it's where it said no, no soliciting. So it was just really annoying. And at the final straw was just when I put a sign up and they took it down. And then the guy that was my opponent's cousin, I believe, he got in my face and said, you don't know who we are and you don't know what we're capable of. And at that point, I really just got on social media, contacted all my volunteers, and just made a really big fuss because it was just, to me, unbelievable. Not only that I was a first time candidate, but I was a woman, and this so-called professional and, current councilman was allowing this to go on, and nobody was really pushing back until, we had to reach out to the election judges and also get the police involved.
And it's really remarkable. You'd think that the way Baltimore Democrats run, they run like the New York Democrats with the Tammany Hall thing they had back in the
Mm-hmm.
1800s. But
Mm-hmm.
and, you aren't the only person who ran in Baltimore, a Republican woman who was harassed. Shannon Wright, when she was
Yeah.
running for mayor, got Zoom bombed during a meeting, and so it seems like Democrats were really threatened this year by Republicans, but especially black female Republicans. You guys shook
Yeah.
them up,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's something we hopefully will see in 4 years.
Yeah, if you have to, in my opinion, do those things, that means that you are not secure as you think. Because if I knew I had it in the bag, of course I wouldn't be taunting my opponent. I would almost be laughing, and I would just be in my lane, comfortable, just focusing on my win. I wouldn't have to do extra things to kind of throw off the opponent or intimidate the opponent.
Well, yeah, and it's ridiculous. And he has his family out there doing it too. I mean, I hear his cousin runs a pizza place, which I'm not going to name on this video because I don't want a YouTube strike. But you'll be happy to know I've not ordered from there. I considered it once, but
Yeah,
when I heard this
yeah,
stuff, I was like, not getting my
yeah,
money.
yeah,
So on to today's main subject: social media and their tendency not only to censor conservatives but to manipulate information. So recently, Breitbart News just had a editorial piece about how YouTube is about to remove the dislike button because Democrats keep getting ratioed, especially Joe Biden. It's hilarious to me, honestly, watching them post
yeah,
these videos where they're so confident and they think they're going to get all these likes, and then the ratio just isn't there. And so it seems, as Edward Nolte, who wrote the piece, wrote, he said it seems like they're trying to cover up for the elites and to prevent the common man from dissenting or calling them out. So how do you
yeah.
feel about that?
It's very obvious to me. I am a political buff and I pay attention to all media outlets, whether it be liberal, whether it be bipartisan, or of course, conservative news outlets. And what I've seen is, even with my own social media platform, for instance, I posted, why are we still wearing masks when supposedly, the vaccine, and it's a year and a half later. And then I get a message on Facebook over top of my post urging people to visit the CDC website where you can get information on how to get vaccinated. And the problem is we no longer have a system where it is free speech. We have these social media platforms infringing on our First Amendment, our constitutional right, and limiting people who go against the status quo. And it's the tech elites, it's the politicians, and you now don't have this system where you can have an opposing view, because if you do have an opposing view, we see that just like, our 45th president, Donald Trump, you can be removed from the platform or banned, or just like my content that I posted, it can be manipulated in a way that doesn't conform with your belief and actually goes against it, and further, pushes that message of the left wing or the Democratic stance.
It's really scary too, and it gets worse every year. No one's safe. As you just said, the president of the United States was banned from social media. The president, and I mean, I probably run this story in the ground, but this happened years ago. My first ever ban on Facebook was for sharing an article that talked about a gay male couple who basically promoted eugenics. They wanted their doctor to make sure their surrogate child came out gay too. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a gay man. I post something saying this is disgusting. These two should never have children. Da 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 da. Child abuse. That was my first ever Facebook ban for hate speech, because a gay man can't call out other gay men for being large hypocrites. And you're right. It's the status quo. You can't fight back against the status quo.
Yeah, it's really alarming, because at this point, we've seen in history, this is how dictatorships and communist regimes start. They obviously censor you, they control the media, and then they take away your guns, and the government has all the power to dictate where you work, what you say, how you say it. If you look at China, this is the setup. This they have, journalists can be imprisoned. You're not allowed to obviously practice certain just really fundamental human rights without being punished. And so if our American society, which is land of the home of the brave, and land of the free, is starting to do that, it's really starting to look like we could be going down a path that's not democracy at all, but more so
It definitely
again,
is.
communism.
It definitely
Communism.
is, and I don't think for a heartbeat any of these left-wing media journalists or even the politicians would, in a heartbeat, be unhappy if they could arrest Tucker Carlson. It's a very scary moment in our country's history, and these companies are definitely aligning with China. You mentioned China there, and a lot of them
Yeah,
are.
yeah,
You've got the Major League Baseball thing recently,
yeah,
all of these sports leagues, the social media companies. Google's working on a censored search engine for China. And
yeah,
so, it definitely feels like we've got that lean towards authoritarianism when China suddenly begins to be the model for everyone else, especially when
yeah,
they can
yeah,
dunk on our diplomats in our own
yeah.
country.
Steal out intellectual property. It's so many stories that you really have to dig for. I think I believe I saw it on Newsmax or one of those really controversial media outlets that share stories that are not mainstream, just in NBC or CNN. And I believe they said that within the first 20 days, Biden actually allowed China to access our mainframe. And it was so sickening to me, because typically we want to protect China against stealing our intellectual property. Even Joe Biden said China doesn't have a democratic bone in their body. So if we're allowing them to access our mainframe and, tap and steal our intellectual property, and even honestly access our national intelligence, what does that say? That means either we owe China, or at this point we're trying to become more like them. And I mean, honestly, that is clearly a socialist communist government, which is the counter or complete opposite of what we have or are supposed to have in America.
Yeah. So here's a quick question, because we're almost going to switch to our game segment here. But do you think that with the Biden administration, this is going to end up like the Harris administration in the late 1800s, where Harris beat the incumbent, but then was beat by the former incumbent 4 years later because of unpopular policies? Do you think we're going to see something like that again?
Um, I'm almost guaranteed that we'll see something like that. There was a poll done, and I was just going, through various sites, and I saw a lot of people just specifically with the voter laws. Everybody on the mainstream media is trying to say that, it's totally just outrageous that Georgians would have people required to have these voters show ID. But realistically, if you ask the everyman and most even migrants or even just citizens, it's not racist or it's not something that's totally absurd at all. It's very normal, and a lot of people are urging lawmakers to definitely, obviously, require to make it fair ID when you vote. So I think just paying attention to these situations that the media tries to stay away from, immigration, and obviously, voter integrity, people are paying attention that although Donald Trump might have been a personality that's a little bit blunt and a little bit in your face, he actually got things done. He actually had more money in the pocket. The welfare and the economy were actually changed in a way where it was helpful to most Americans. So it's going to be the situation where, yeah, Biden, you may have had 4 years, but you're not going to get a second term, and Trump is going to come in here and take control of the situation that Biden seemed to obviously throw away.
Let's hope that's the case. But anyway, really quickly, it's now time for our segment, Did They Do It? It's a little game where I read you, something that sounds like a story or a law that's been passed, and you tell me whether or not this is actually a thing. Did they do it?
Okay, excellent.
So we're going to start with I'm going to throw you a softball real quick, because I've been having a very hard time with my guests, getting these games. All right, here's the softball. In recent news, it came to light that Joe Biden's dogs had to be removed from the White House because they kept biting Secret Service. But it just broke today that it was in fact Joe who was biting the Secret Service members. Did this happen?
I wouldn't put it past him, but I'm going to say recently they had him heavily sedated, so no, he was not biting. I'm going to say no, he was not biting.
You got it right, though. But I just really wanted to get that joke out there. Okay, we're going to go into some odd laws now.
Okay.
Let's start. In Alabama, is it illegal to play dominoes on Sunday?
Because it's Alabama, I would say yes. They have weird laws, even in Maryland, so southern states are kind of obscure, yes.
Well, you're 100% correct. In Alabama, it is illegal to play dominoes on Sunday. It's also illegal to wear a fake mustache that causes laughter in church or put salt on a railroad track. Now, that last one's punishable by death.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, moving on. This week, there was also a bit of news surrounding Major League Baseball. They've decided, finally, that they are going to move the All-Star game to Hong Kong.
What?
According to that, it strikes a balance between their, Chinese leanings and democracy. True or false?
That's a hard one. Because it's an American pastime, I would say it's been a debate, but no. Is that a no?
You're 100% correct. It's absolutely wrong. Okay. Last one. This is a California law. Is it true that in Los Angeles, a man may legally beat his wife with a leather strap as long as it's less than 2 inches wide, or she gives him permission to use a wider strap?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to say it's illegal. It's not legal.
Actually, you're incorrect. In Los Angeles, it is a man may legally beat his wife with a leather strap, which might explain why California is so messed up.
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
That's absolutely outrageous. Wow.
Okay, one last one, and this is international laws. I love this one. People never guess this right. In Australia, is it illegal for you to go skateboarding with an ice cream cone in your back pocket? 10 seconds.
Sure, yes.
You're pretty much correct there. It is actually, according to Australian law, it's illegal to walk down the street with an ice cream cone in your back pocket.
Oh wow! Oh wow!
But I'm sure skateboarding
That's crazy.
applies too. You got to imagine what kind of angry person said, God, I don't want them skateboarding or walking with ice cream cones in their back
Right,
pocket.
right.
But then you also have to wonder who had the ice cream cone in their back pocket.
Who's running Australia? You know,
Crazy people. Well, it was great having you on, Maria, and you got 4 out of 5 of those right, which is amazing.
Yay.
And again, that California one,
yeah.
they're clearly not enforcing that, but they've got a lot of weird laws in the book. It was great having you on, Maria, and you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks again for running in 2020.
Thank you so much for having me, and I do appreciate. This was a great conversation. You have a great evening as well.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
We might have had a small technical difficulty or two there, but Maria was a great interviewee, and she's one of the reasons I wanted to start out this podcast by interviewing the Baltimore 2020 candidates. They have such valuable things to say, not only in the stories they tell us about their run against all odds here in Baltimore, but also in their thoughts on current events, including the social media thing. Now, the issue with the social media is that we are fighting with our own on this too. The solution to the whole thing is that these companies need to be regulated. But a lot of conservatives balk at regulation. They say, it's a private business. They should be able to ban who they want to. Well, somebody disagrees with you. Justice Clarence Thomas, just a day ago, said that he believes social media companies should be regulated. And he is a constitutional originalist. He's right. There's nothing in our Constitution that guarantees the right of any corporation to have the ability to discriminate or to enforce the policies of one political party. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing today, is that social media companies and a lot of these corporations are enforcing the policies that Democrats want but can't legally pass. They're censoring the Democrats' opponents. They're keeping them free from criticism. And at some point, we need to actually fight back, because the Constitution is by the people and for the people, not by the corporations and for the corporations. So first and foremost, we need to put the individual's right first. Now, this is different than saying this is different than a lot of the other things about government intrusion into private business and other arguments that a lot of classical conservatives, as they call themselves, but they really aren't, but a lot of them will make, is that the government shouldn't intrude in private business. But that's completely wrong. We regulate gas and utilities for a reason, so that your gas man can't come and cut off your gas because you voted for Trump, so that the electricity company can't cut off your power because you're streaming a conservative podcast, so that nobody can sit there and cut off your water because you happen to be a Republican who's a member of the Republican Central Committee of your city. We need to actually do something about this entire issue. Because what good are our constitutional rights protected against the government if a private corporation can do away with those rights as a proxy? There's no easy answer, but at the same time there is. Anyway, that's our show for today. It was great having Maria on, and I'm hoping next week we will have another 2020 candidate, and I'll actually get it out on time. Unfortunately, we had technical issues yesterday, and I was unable to get the video together in time for my 7 o'clock deadline. So, let's pray next week my computer behaves. Anyway, this is William Hellmann saying good night and enjoy your week. And go get a COVID vaccine or don't or whatever. Just live your life as an individual, knowing that your individual rights are protected against anybody, or should be in any case. Good night.